Welcome to the latest edition of the Dynamic Political Centrism podcast, hosted by Alan Steinberg, produced by Dr. Yonatan Yoniyaris the Doc. This week's special guest, Brent Johnson, political reporter for NJ.com and the Star Ledger.
Good evening and welcome to the podcast Dynamic Political Centrism. I am the voice of Dynamic Political Centrism, Alan Steinberg, and we always have special shows, but tonight's show is actually historic, and I say that without hyperbole. We have on as our special guest, and we've been honored by his presence before, Brent Johnson, whom I think right now, if there's any person, any journalist who can win a Pulitzer resulting from that, I mean, I'm serious, resulting from this year's election, it's Brent Johnson, and this is becoming one hell of a nail-biting election. Yes. Let me tell you an interesting sidelight with Doc Yaris and me. We're both observant Jews, and at the beginning of the week, we thought about maybe we would just skip the podcast for this week. That was very bad judgment on my part. I decided eventually that we would do it, but what I forgot is the main maxim of New Jersey politics. That is, you can go on vacation from New Jersey politics. It never goes on vacation from you. And I would have to say, and Brent, I say this without hyperbole, in the 50 years I've been involved in New Jersey politics, usually as a participant, actually, I have never had a more tumultuous day than today. The day started off with the poll results, which now show a dead heat between Mikey Sherrill and her opponent, Jack Ciattarelli. It progressed into the scandal of the day, scandal of the year, involving the issue of the honor code and whether Mikey Sherrill was in violation of it and whether any violation of the law was committed by the supporters of her opponent. Now, I'll address my feelings on this, but Brent, I'd like to turn to you first because you have a habit of becoming an expert on whatever you cover. But let me just give the poll results real quick. Mm-hmm. The poll results right now show 33 for Sherrill. If I make a mistake on any of this, correct me.
43, yeah. 43.
Yeah, 43, excuse me, with 11% undecided. Now, that is not good news for Mikey Sherrill, but that is not the worst of the news she got from poll results. This is from Emerson, which is a pretty well-rated polling service.
Yeah.
So you have 43, 11% undecided. But the very bad news she got was the polling results on Phil Murphy that show Phil Murphy now underwater, 35-44. My feeling, based on elections I have covered, is that when the incumbent governor is underwater, that is very bad news for the person of the same party who is running for re-election for the same time. Now, as you know, about a week ago, Phil Murphy continued to maintain a good, healthy lead, not a landslide, but he was always in front. And this is a real change of fortunes. I'd like you to answer two questions of me. I would trust your intuition is better than mine. Do you think any of this was blowback from the debate? Because I have my own feelings about the debate. And number two, what do you think are the ramifications for Mikey Sherrill, what she may have to do, aside from the big issue we're going to cover?
Yeah, I mean, I think what the poll I think it was taken right around the debate. I think probably
22nd and 23rd.
Yes, right after the debate.
Right after the debate, yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the debate showed what the race has been showing, that the two are very different candidates, and it's been very combative, and they both went after each other. And Democrats will tell you she did better than they thought, and Republicans will say Jack looked more confident and more gubernatorial. So debates now are kind of where they don't change a lot of minds unless there's a really explosive moment, like something out of the vice presidential debate in the Dukakis-Bush race. But that said, a lot of people tune into debates. It's a question of whether it changes their mind. But it does show that what I've been hearing from both sides is that this is a close race. This is a head-to-head matchup that's going to be a ball game. And that polls that have shown Sherrill well in front might be fading a little bit, like the race might be getting tighter. And I think that's what this is the first poll that shows her not in front. and that's a big jump. It's not a 1-point lead, a 2-point lead. It's tied. It's statistically a dead heat. So I think this race is going to continue to keep getting fascinating as we get closer to Election Day.
It is getting fascinating, and now momentum seems to have swung over to Jack Ciattarelli.
Yes, that's true.
I think there was one very bad mistake she made in the debate, and it hasn't received a lot of publicity. And what it was when she basically accused Jack Ciattarelli, who could get an award any year as the New Jersey's leading small businessman. No one has ever challenged his competency on that. No one has ever challenged his honesty to his small business practices. But when she said that Jack had a short-lived career, or it appears that he may have had a short-lived career because his numbers never added up. Jack Ciattarelli was one hell of a good small businessman. He was absolutely unchallenged as to his proficiency as a CPA. And I thought this was a gratuitous and needless swipe at him for something she got no traction out of.
Yeah, it was the one moment of the debate where it seemed she was taking a shot. And I mean, and that she was throwing a punch, and which is what some Democrats I know felt she needed to do. It's kind of an insult that's become more common in politics these days. The other moment I kept hearing Democrats saying, or Republicans saying from her, is that she continued the accusation that Ciattarelli is going to raise taxes, sales tax 10%, and but she would not commit to not raising the sales tax herself, which some Republicans saw as hypocritical. And even some Democrats told me she probably should have taken that off the table, but she didn't. So there were a few notable moments. It was also a sharp exchange on immigration. She would not commit to keeping the immigrant trust directive in place, sanctuary policies, and that they also got into a little tiff on Charlie Kirk, where they were asked whether they would support Doug Steinhardt and Brian Stack's legislation to make political violence a crime in New Jersey. And she would not go as far as to say, she said she wanted to look at it. And he said that he absolutely would sign it.
Well, she started off with her answer on that, where I was somewhat in accord with her. Okay, that surprises anybody who knows that I am not one of Mikey Sherrill's big supporters. But she started off saying how she disagreed with him. Well, I did too. I did disagree with him very fundamentally. I didn't like the statement he made on Dr. Martin Luther King. And I also didn't like his lack of support for civil rights. But he seemed to have turned a corner right before the assassination. The story was by Van Jones, who works at CNN, and he served in the administration of Barack Obama. And he said right off the bat, he said that he had received a phone call from Charlie Kirk, and that Charlie Kirk wanted to outreach him and wanted to have a conversation. Now, regardless of how people may feel about Charlie Kirk, I think that anyone running for office should welcome that, because there is a need for dialogue and there is a need for conversation, regardless of how you felt about Charlie Kirk. But she seems to have dismissed that altogether, and I think that can have a bad effect on a candidate, because the public wants a sense of healing. The public wants to see candidates who may stick to their views, but they want a dialogue. They want healing. And I think by basically disregarding that, I think she hurt herself.
Yeah, I mean, again, there are moments you could take away on both sides, that basically what debates have kind of turned into is that people are tuning in to see how their candidate is doing, less to learn about the candidates. Maybe the next debate will be a little bit different about that, but it's largely to give people attack ads and things to gripe about on social media. So again, neither of them, basically the consensus I've heard from the political world is that neither had a great night, neither had a terrible night. It kind of reinforced the kind of candidates that are, reinforced who you might vote for. But I think the next debate will be even more explosive after some of the events that have happened this week.
Well, I think the events of today
Yes.
will definitely influence the tone of the next debate. So let's talk about today. I get up early in the morning. I had been observing Rosh Hashanah, as Doc had, for 2 days. And I looked for the morning headlines. I wanted to, last night after the holiday was over, I looked over the debate. I actually watched the whole thing which shows you what a political junkie is in the form of Alan Steinberg. So I watched the whole debate. I made my own conclusions. And then this morning, I awakened to find out more stories, whether there was any further reaction to the debate. And then all of a sudden, I think it was around 1 o'clock, the story came over the wires about Mikey Sherrill and the honor code at Annapolis. And I was in a state of total shock. You know, this had never been an issue before of any candidate. I'm very familiar with the honor code because I was a commissioned naval officer. I received my commission from the NROTC program at Northwestern. I'm very proud of that commission. And I worked very closely with other naval officers, particularly graduates of of Annapolis, who were always looked upon as the cream of the crop in terms of naval officers, ones you're looking at for future leadership of the country. And I started getting phone calls like crazy. I really did. I could not believe the reaction to this, and I could not believe that the anger that was coming out of both camps. What I'd like you to do, I could read off exactly what the honor code is, but I know you've gained a lot of expertise. The article you wrote on it, and I'm not saying this to ingratiate myself with you because we've always been able to be frank, although I have a very high opinion of you as a journalist, basically for two reasons. Number one, you are a very good investigative reporter, but you also are a very good analyst, and those are the two skills you need to bring to a campaign. So what I'd like you to do is start off giving us in concise form your perception of the honor code, and then we'll get into the politics as to how it may be affecting this election.
Yeah, I mean, from what I've read about the honor code, I was not a Navy officer, although both my grandfathers served in the military. But I basically don't lie that you should be above the board and be an upstanding person who doesn't lie. And so the you show honor, and you're a serviceman, servicewoman of the Navy. And basically what happened today was there was a story from the New Jersey Globe that said she was barred from walking at her 1994 Naval Academy graduation because she did not turn in members of her class who cheated on an exam. This was a big scandal in the early 90s. In case anyone doesn't remember, 1992 to 94, a lot of midshipmen had to basically were found out and became a big national news story. And it did not say that she cheated herself, but that she was not allowed to walk in graduation because she was someone who didn't turn them in. She admitted to this, and she said it. And Sherrill's campaign is saying this shows that she's not above board and she's not showing that she followed the honor code. And the other thing was that she has not agreed to release the records that would show exactly what happened. And Sherrill's campaign is saying that, what is she hiding? Is she lying? And
I think that's the most significant thing.
Yes.
I think if she had revealed this story very early in the campaign, even as early as her announcement, it wouldn't even be an issue. She could have said it very on, I did have a problem with the honor code. I apologized for it. I attempted to conduct myself as a scholar and as a high ethical naval officer, and she wouldn't have had the problem. But it's always the cover-up that gets you, not the violation itself. And she covered it up. And by the time later on, she was doing something else. She was conflating the way the records were released. And by the way, I don't see anything in those records that actually talk about her honor code violation. It seems more to focus on how the records were released, what the procedure was. But she still is avoiding what the honor code violation was and taking responsibility for it. I think if she continues to stick to her guns on that, I think it's going to hurt her campaign a great deal. I think the best thing she could do right now would be to open the book, so to speak, and reveal her records and comment on them and answer questions.
Yeah, I asked their campaign today if they were going to release the records, the full records, and they did not say so. So I expect this to continue to be something that Sherrill brings up and that Sherrill will be asked about. And, we have a debate in less than 2 weeks, so I'm sure definitely will come up then again. So I expect this to be an ongoing issue in the race.
Well, I think it will be too. And I think that in order to get ahead of the issue, the ultimate hangout route, as they used to call it during Watergate. Let it all hang out, so to speak. I think that would be her best policy. That's taken from the song. I'm much older than you, and you're skilled musicians, but I remember the song, "Let It All Hang Out."
Yes.
And I think that's the song that the Sherrill campaign should listen to. But instead, they really responded with vitriol. And, they were talking about, I couldn't buy one thing they said. Yes, records are supposed to remain private, but by using inflated language like this revelation is a threat to every naval officer, I don't think there's any naval officer who's going to buy that. I think naval officers basically value the honor code. It's something they're proud of. And by conflating this and placing the blame on those who had the records released, we still don't know exactly how it happened. I read what De Gregorio said, and I couldn't figure out anything from that. What's your understanding as to how these records, and whether there was anything amiss in how these records were released?
Yeah, what I understand was that De Gregorio was trying to do campaign opposition research, which is pretty common in campaigns, and he filed a public records request for a federal public records request, and the National Archives branch sent him nearly unredacted, fully unredacted files about her military career, her military record, and that he was surprised that they sent out this whole thing and included her social security numbers and addresses of her and her parents. And that the Cittarelli campaign didn't do anything with it because they didn't find anything. And Sherrill's team is saying this is an invasion of privacy. And so it seems that's what happened. The National Archives admitted to it today. They said they did release too much information. It went too far, and they apologized to Sherrill. And Jack's team is saying, she's just trying to push away the issue, deflect by making this an issue. I don't think anyone will say this is probably, there's separate but related but unrelated issues, but they're both here. You shouldn't release private records, and it seems like it was done by mistake. But she is saying that Trump worked in collusion with Cittarelli's campaign, which they're denying. But there's also the honor code thing, and the cheating scandal also is an issue that should be raised. So it seemed like two parallel issues that aren't quite connecting.
Well, that leads to another question, and you may be better able to answer this than anybody I've talked to all day. Yes, the records were unredacted, but there was nothing in there that really indicated what the violation of the honor code was. But how did the journalists who were covering this story, I believe David Wildstein was covering it for MJ Globe, how did they find this out? By about 3:00, everyone knew about it.
Yeah, that's a good question. That I don't know. I know I found out through, there are multiple news reports, and then I talked to the National Archives, I talked to Cittarelli's campaign, I talked to Sherrill's campaign. So I'm not sure who leaked it, the honor code situation. I believe it seems the Globe got the information, and it seems CBS News got the information about the privacy breach. So it seemed like it was a lot to unpack. Confusing day, but explosive day.
Well, my impression is the same as yours, but what that tells me is there's a lot more there, because if they didn't get all the details about how she didn't report something on the cheating scandal, and she didn't report what she knew, again, I think these are matters she could have easily handled had she been upfront at the very beginning. But all of a sudden, it was known by, as you said, by CBS, by the Globe, and
yeah,
in fact,
did stories, the record.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, a number of outlets did stories on it.
Yes, and this is the most puzzling thing to me of all. If there was nothing in the records, how did they get all this information? I was just astounded by that.
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't have all the answers. There seems like there's going to be a few to pick up over the days.
And we don't know yet what the nature and quality of that information is going to be. But given the fact that integrity and ethics are a part of this campaign, as they are a part of any campaign, this controversy is likely to linger. And that is not a positive for her at all.
No, it plays, the whole records breach thing plays into her argument that Trump is bad and oh, look at what they're willing to do. But Yeah, the naval issue is something she will definitely face more questions over, and it's a matter of how much voters care about that. Military service used to be a very big facet of politics, and it's shrunk over the years. But it's also seen as her military service has been one of the major parts of her campaign. She has repeatedly noted that she's a Navy pilot, and it's a question of how much this is going to hurt her and whether she can brush it off.
Well, that's my point exactly. She had more commercials about Navy helicopter pilot Mikey Sherrill. Okay, one has a right to be proud of their military service, particularly women. I'll give her credit for that because women were discriminated against in terms of military service for so many years. But if that's a part of your record, if there's any negative part of that, the blowback is going to be fast and furious. And the fact is now, I could just see the people who make commercials for Chitterelli's having a commercial where she's, and this is the beauty of what they call the split commercial, starting off Navy pilot Mikey Sherrill, and then all of a sudden, wait a minute, and they interrupt. This happened in previous campaigns. Interrupt the commercial. Did you know that when Mikey Sherrill was at Annapolis, that she violated the honor code and that she was not permitted to march with her other midshipmen in the graduation ceremony? If you can mold a commercial together like that, it can be a very high impact commercial, even if the public is not that concerned.
Yeah, it would be. That's the kind of commercial you used to see a lot more in politics, and you don't see as much now. Again, this will probably be a lingering issue that she will try and paint into the corner of Donald Trump went too far, and he will try and say that she has a military record, but there are questions there. Again, it's going to continue to come up.
Well, I have a record of being very much negative towards Donald Trump. And it's hardly the biggest secret of New Jersey journalism that I am. But I don't see any evidence that he was involved in this. Maybe one could speculate that someone on his political staff did this, although we don't yet have any hard evidence of this. But that's the other danger. Frank Pallone and other members of Congress, I believe Bonnie Watson Coleman was another one.
Yeah,
They all went out.
All the Democrats in the state's congressional delegation all went out and said this should be investigated.
Exactly. And they all went out riding herd on this thing, saying this was all done by Donald Trump. Well, Donald Trump certainly invites a lot of criticism. But if you're going to criticize him for something where you don't have the evidence yet, it's going to hurt your overall credibility. I do not think this was a well-handled issue by her campaign.
It was a very confusing day. It was a lot to put together, and that's why I said I think pieces are going to continue to fall.
I agree with you, and we'll be following every instance of this. And then that took on a political dimension. The story in the afternoon, also in New Jersey Globe, was that Nick Sacco was considering endorsing Jack Chitterelli.
Yes.
Now, I spent almost my entire career as an amusement, and I mean that respectfully, regarding Hudson County politics. I was always fascinated by it. Hudson County is almost a sovereign state. And I don't say that in a bad way. I had my own experience in Hudson County. I was the head of the Meadowlands Commission, and I was a Republican who got along very well with the Democratic mayors. The reason was I was a Republican appointee. I had been appointed by Governor Whitman, and the Democratic mayors, they were almost all Democrats. They didn't try to hurt me because they knew that I had the backing of the government, and I didn't try to hurt them because I knew they'd be there for good. So we all got along for a long time, and we had pretty good cooperation between myself as a Republican executive director of the Meadowlands Commission, responsible for all the zoning and planning. And I also got involved with the mayors. I'll tell you one quick aside. I had a meeting with Donald Trump personally in the year was 2007. He was trying to get the bid on the contract for the Meadowlands Golf Resort project. And I had started the project. Unfortunately, it got very corrupted over time. And I had started the project, and I get a call from Trump's golf advisor. The golf is one kind of development he actually always did fairly well.
Yeah,
I have to give him credit for something.
His golf courses are among the best in the world. Yeah,
there's no question. I can give Donald Trump credit for great golf.
I even wrote a story about that in the 2016 campaign about how good his golf courses were.
Oh, they are. There's no question. I mean, if that's all the good he ever did, it's nothing to be terribly proud of, but he did a great job with them. So I get a call from his golf advisor. I think his name was Ed Russo. He said, Donald Trump wants to meet you over in his offices at Trump Tower. So I called my ethics officer and I said, can I meet with him? They said, sure, you're supposed to promote green development. At the same time, I get another call from the State Ethics Commission. I called them. I had served on the State Ethics Commission. And she said, by all means, yes, it's been a lot more than 5 years or whatever the period was, the round robin period. So by all means, go over and meet with him. Now, that was quite an experience. I go over to his office and we kidded around for a few minutes. The guy who sat next to me the whole meeting was Michael Cohen. So when I heard all the stuff about Michael Cohen never being involved and never being a player with Trump, I knew that was BS. And by BS, I don't mean Bachelor of Science. I knew that was nonsense, okay? So Cohen sat next to me. He always tried to look, he was a version of Sonny Liston. He was always trying to look at you and intimidate you, but he wasn't intimidating me at all. I said, what's he going to do? Get up and beat me up or something? So that was not a worry of mine, but he just tried to take on this foreboding look. And I told Trump, and this all relates to the Meadowlands. I told Trump at the time that I actually wanted to see him get this development project. I thought he would have done a good job of it. I said, but there's two problems you have. Number one, I never allow, as the executive director, when I was executive director, I never allowed for housing outside of the zoning limits. Because in the Meadowlands, the worst problem is traffic and the pollution that results from vehicular traffic, much more than old plants or anything like that. Mm-hmm. And I said, I did not want to see any more air pollution in the Meadowlands. And I said, so I think it's important that you limit your housing. And he kept calling me Al. He said, no, Al, I'm going to get that amount of housing. He said, I'm going to get it. You watch. And I said, okay, but the other thing is you have to start meeting with the mayors. Oh, no, Al, I don't have to meet with them. He said, he kept calling me Al, which I thought was humorous because growing up, my mother never wanted people to call me Al. She always wanted them to call me Al. And he says, oh, no, Al. He says, I don't need to meet with them. I'm meeting with you. He said, he was trying to be complimentary, but he said to me, I'll build for them a few ball fields. I said, Donald, you don't know how important the mayors are in the Meadowlands, and you don't understand the air pollution problems, how bad they are. He said, and he gave me his card, and I got Michael Cohen's card. I still have it. He said, you can call me anytime, and we can work this out. I said, okay. So I left with my chief of staff at the time. I said, this is a guy, and this is the stupidest statement I ever made, or at least the most ill-advised. I said, this guy would never get anywhere in politics. Boy, was I wrong. I mean, I could not have been more wrong. And a few years later, he becomes the president. Actually, it was around 10 years later, he's elected president of the United States. But I mention all this because the Meadowlands has a culture all of its own. And the mayors are really big players. And right now, you have a situation in the Meadowlands where there's a clash of two powers. Brian Stack is still the most powerful political figure, in my view, in the Meadowlands, or in Hudson County, I should say. He's a powerful figure there. He's great at getting out a vote, and he really rules the roost for the Democratic Party. Now, he has come into conflict with Nick Sacco, and Nick Sacco over in North Bergen, and Brian Stack is basically a Union City guy. And so they have this conflict, but Brian has seemed to rule the roost. But if Sacco endorses Chitterelli, it's going to cut into the vote that basically right now Mikey Sherrill would get. It was a very big event in the primary when Brian Stack switched over. He had been anticipated as supporting the candidacy of Josh Gottheimer. He switched over to Mikey Sherrill, and that had a big effect on the election. Now, the question is now with this emerging scandal, if it continues to be a problem, it's possible that Nick Sacco may see an opportunity, and he may decide to, I'm not saying he will or won't, but he may decide to endorse Chitterelli, which would mean that a lot of Hudson County towns, a sizable number, would vote for Chitterelli in the campaign. And if Mikey Sherrill does not get the kind of margin she needs in Hudson County, she's going to lose. But that's how I see it at that point. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it's another sign that I've always heard Democrats see her as a very strong candidate on paper. That she has the Navy record and former prosecutor. Won a formerly red district in a Trump woman, mother, very very polished candidate. But there's always been a question of her charisma, and always been a question of how well does she play with other fellow Democrats. And so maybe there's some there. This is New Jersey is a place where Democrats eat their own. They often talk behind each other's backs and try and strike deals. And maybe this is a case of that, where Sacco sees that there's a chance that Chitterelli might win, and maybe I should start cutting a deal now. You saw Chris Christie cut deals with the other Democratic side when he was governor with
Yes,
Northbrook and Steve Sweeney. So, New Jersey's a shark-filled political world, and maybe there's something more going on here that I don't know about. This is Democrats trying to touch the political wind and see what kind of deals they can make and whether that's fair to Sherrill or not. And it's also another sign that the race is closer than the early polls showed. You wouldn't have a big time Hudson County party boss thinking about this if he thought that Sherrill was definitely going to win.
Well, I agree with you. And I think, though, that Nick Sacco is a guy that bears watching over the next month, right up to Election Day, because Phil Swabinski, one of his advisors tonight, came out with a statement. No, he's a loyal Democrat, and he's not going to desert Michael Sherrill. Swabinski himself had endorsed in the primary Steve Fulop. But I don't know. I will not make. I've learned not to make so many predictions. I can give analysis, but I can't make such good predictions. So, but this is something that bears watching. It bears a lot of watching, because I think if Jack Chitterelli, who loves the campaign, he loves to go to places like Hudson County and get votes for a Republican that no Republican has gotten before, and he's pretty successful at it. So I anticipate that Hudson County is definitely going to be a targeted area for him.
Yeah, especially Hudson also shifted towards Trump last year.
Right.
Same thing for Passaic. So maybe there's a thought that maybe it's getting a little bit redder and you want to hedge your bets. Again, if Phil came out on the record and said he's not going to endorse, it would be a major shift if Sacco did endorse. But, the fact that this is even being talked about shows kind of the swirlingness of what's going on now in politics and the questions of how close this race is.
Well, there's a temptation for Sacco to do this also. If he endorses Chitterelli and Chitterelli wins, he will be the person in Hudson County with the friendly governor, and this will impact Stack's ability to make deals, to help his own base, basically to get projects for Hudson County. I'm not saying that Jack Chitterelli would just arbitrarily and capriciously deny him anything, but it helps when you are a leading political figure in your county and you're the one that has the friendly governor. So I think that's a big temptation for Sacco, and I think that he bears watching over the next few weeks. And I think that the impact of the possible scandal over the honor code may be a temptation for Sacco to go over to Chitterelli. I don't know, but it could happen.
Yeah, I mean, as so many things that bear watching. I keep telling everybody, and I think I said this on the last podcast that we were on, that this is such a fascinating race with so many layers and so many things that could unfold, and never underestimate New Jersey politics. As the late Michael Aaron always used to say, it's the gift that keeps on giving. So, always pay attention. Always keep your eyes open in Jersey politics.
Well, that I am going to do, and your guidance will be very helpful to me, because, oh, wow, you never know when you get up in the morning exactly what is going to happen
that is true.
In any of these races. So now what we have coming up, we have the debate on October 8th. And what you indicated before, I think, holds water, that this debate may be a lot nastier than the previous one. This was a pretty nasty debate, actually. But the next one may be even more explosive, because I still think that when you have a tight race like this, both candidates are looking to break through. And given that factor, who knows what will happen?
Yes. Yeah, I mean, there's so much to watch for that. I can't believe the debate couldn't. It's almost a week and a half away. It couldn't come sooner. The one thing that there's a lot of things to note. The poll shows it's close. Of course, New Jersey still. A lot of this is going to come down to turnout. New Jersey still has 800,000 more registered Democrats and Republicans, although the second largest voting bloc is independents or unaffiliated. So there's room to make up. Sherrill has to run a really strong campaign in the final weeks. He has to pick up all Republicans, has to pick up independents. In today's poll show, he's leading with independents. The question is, do enough Democrats stay home like they did for Kamala Harris last year to give him the victory? But, Democrats still feel confident about this race. They still feel that it's a Democratic state, and with Donald Trump in the White House, it's going to be tough for them to lose it. But again, political winds change, polls change, and there's so much up in the air. A lot to watch out for.
Well, I think where Chitterelli's main advantage in turnout is what the polls show about enthusiasm.
Yes, he does
still
have
has
according to polls.
A sizable advantage on enthusiasm, which bodes well for his turnout records. If he gets the turnout that he is seeking, and Mikey Sherrill does not, I think he becomes the favorite in the race. I'll tell you, I've seen more favorites and underdogs in this race go up and down, that it makes your head scratch after a while.
Yeah, and it's also, it's a state that hasn't elected one party to the 3 straight terms in the governor's office since 1961. I think I mentioned last time that's a year before the Mets even existed. The Beatles were still 3 years from Ed Sullivan. So that's a long time. And usually the other thing that plays against that, though, is usually whoever wins the White House the year before doesn't win the governor's race. Although Murphy actually broke that. Murphy in 2021, Biden won in 2020, and then Murphy won another term. So there's a lot of historical questions about this. And, then there's also mail-in ballot and early voting. It seems that Republicans are really trying to drive up their numbers on mail-in ballots and early voting, and that could give them an advantage that Democrats have largely usually had. Is also a question: do enough independents? Is Donald Trump going to do something in the final 5 weeks that really turns independents off and make them want to stay home? And again, questions galore.
Well, Trump himself, I don't think will campaign in New Jersey because he's aware of his own unpopularity here. And I would think, I've never discussed this with Jack Chitterelli, I would think that they have certain goals in their campaign. They have certain targets. And as long as they're meeting those metrics, I don't think they would ask him to campaign. No offense to him, but I've seen a lot of campaigns where the president didn't come in.
Yes.
I don't anticipate he will be coming in. I do think that there's one thing that Chitterelli can do as he goes down the stretch. I don't know how good Tom Kaine's health is. It may be perfectly fine. But Kaine is still the most beloved governor in New Jersey history. And if Chitterelli can get him to make a few campaign appearances, I think that could really be a factor in pushing him towards victory. But I don't know what Kaine's going to do.
Yeah, I spoke to Tom Kaine not that long ago, a few months ago, and he seemed in pretty good spirits. He spoke very well, and I don't know, exactly. I didn't talk to him about his health. But Kaine told me that he backs Jack and he thinks Jack would be a good candidate. So that could be something you'd see him maybe putting out a statement or showing up with him somewhere. I don't think you're going to see Murphy campaign much with Sherrill. The question is whether Sherrill could get someone like Barack Obama to come in for Obama campaign.
I was thinking that exactly.
Yeah, Barack Obama came in to campaign for Murphy in 2021. A lot can happen in the final 8 weeks.
I'm wondering about one other factor. Sherrill was very friendly with Abigail Spanberger, who is going to be elected governor of Virginia.
They were roommates.
They were sort of, and I don't use this in a pejorative sense, they were sort of the new kids on the block, and they both got a lot of good publicity in their early service in the House of Representatives, mostly on the issue of foreign affairs and military security. They sort of took the same rubric and pushed it. But if Abigail Spanberger doesn't have any honor code scandal, and Mikey Sherrill does, I think that contrast could help Jack Chitterelli a lot.
Again, yeah, I think this is something that I'm not quite sure exactly how Chitterelli is going to mine this, but I don't expect it to stop. So, it's one of a number of things to watch out for in the final weeks.
Yes, and we'll be watching all of those. What about the lieutenant governor candidates? I think they're both good candidates, but I don't yet see. I know that I don't know Dale Caldwell. I do know
Jim Gannon.
Jim. I do know Jim, and I know how effective he can be, and I think he likes campaigning, but how much he's going to be out, and he doesn't have any scandal at all. But how much he's going to be out there, I don't know. He is going to all the campaign appearances.
Well, they have the lieutenant governor candidates on Tuesday have a debate at Union at Kane University in Union. So you will see that. I don't know how much publicity it will get. We've always had lieutenant governor debates, but they don't draw a lot of publicity. So you'll see the sharp contrast there. It's widely seen Jim Gannon was picked for two reasons. One, to highlight the campaign's focus on law and order and law enforcement. And two, to shore up support in Morris County, which is part of Sherrill's congressional district. And it's a largely longtime red area, but has been getting bluer in recent years. So maybe they need to shore up that to make sure her supporters don't go there. And Caldwell was widely seen as a pick to help her shore up the black vote in New Jersey with black voters. And that he's also education based. He's run some charter schools, and he's a longtime school board member in New Brunswick. So there were some calculations there too. It's widely known that you don't know how much LG candidates will give a boost to the candidates, but the idea is do no harm. And neither candidate seem like they do that. They seem like they add to the campaign. You also want
neither candidate is a Dan Quayle, in other words. And I like Dan Quayle actually, but at the same time, the famous gaffe he had with Lloyd Benson, where he apparently compared himself with JFK.
Yes,
that was one of the great gaffes of all time. I don't think either Jim Gannon or Dale Caldwell is likely to make a gaffe like that. But they also are both nice people. They don't seem to be combative.
I didn't hear any negative. Usually you hear something behind the scenes of negativity. Oh, that was a really bad pick. Or I heard nothing but thumbs up from both sides of the aisle on those picks, which is unusual. Usually you hear something.
I agree. The biggest, Kim Guadagno is a friend of mine, and the biggest controversy that she generated in 2009, somebody actually brought up Chris Christie's health. And they mentioned the fact that he was overweight. And she said, let's face it, Chris Christie is fat. But that shouldn't, I thought he must have been sitting at home ready to kill her.
Yeah.
But I could just imagine his reaction to that.
Yeah.
But it didn't seem to cause that, most people thought it was a gaffe, but it didn't seem to be anything that moved the needle at all. And when she became lieutenant governor, she was somewhat effective. She did a lot of business outreach. She was basically providing assistance to the small business in terms of navigating the thicket of regulations in New Jersey. But thus far, both Dale Caldwell and Jim Gannon, they certainly can answer questions. They certainly can handle things well. But I don't know how major effect either one of them is going to have.
Yeah,
I don't think either one of them will have a negative effect.
No, yeah, it's but again, do no harm is always the first choice in picking your running mate, and seems to be both get by in that respect.
Now, Jack Ciattarelli has stated that it is his goal to actually elect a Republican legislature, and Jack Ciattarelli has been in the past very effective for people down ballot.
Yes,
but it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough to get Republicans elected to the legislature in at this time of year. What have you heard about any of the legislative races? Any surprises in store?
No, I've not heard a ton on that. I've not heard a ton on that. That it was more that in 2021, the Republicans picked up a number of seats when Jack was on the ballot. They then lost them, at least most of them, 2 years later. And this is the assembly just on the ticket. It's not the full legislature.
Right.
At the very most, Republicans could get one house, meaning they could flip the assembly. And if Jack wins the governor's seat, they would have a split legislature. and it would be tough for him to get things done. He'd have to make probably some sort of deal like Christie made with the Democrats. So no matter what happens, you'd have to wait 2 years to see if you could flip the Senate. I've not heard anyone thinking that the Republicans are going to take control of the Assembly. I don't know if they could pick up seats or it'll get closer. It would be a major sea change if they could getting the Assembly as well as the governor's office, or vice versa. But the Assembly races don't tend to get as much attention, but it's really a sign of turnout. It's another thing with turnout. If one side or the other can pull up turnout, that may determine the Assembly races.
And in the case of the Assembly races, a key factor in turnout is organizations, and the organizational effort on the street to bring out a larger vote.
Yes. Yeah. Yes, the idea of one hand scratch one, you scratch your back, I'll scratch mine, and getting more attention to the election in general on driving up turnout. Yeah, the legislature is going to be interesting because no matter if she wins and Democrats win, she has the same setup as Murphy, all Democratic rule, and we'll see what she does with that. And if he wins and Democrats keep control of the legislature, then you have the same setup Chris Christie had when he beat John Corzine in 2009. And the questions there are going to be, is he just going to dig in and fight with Democrats for 4 years? Or is he going to strike some sort of deal where they can get some sort of legislation done? Because Christie did his fair share of fighting with Republican or with Democrats, but
especially with Steve Sweeney at the
time. Yeah, but he also cut deals with Steve Sweeney and George Norcross.
Yes, he did. And not all of them. There was one deal that I've disagreed with most Republicans on that Christie cut that I actually thought worked out. And it was on the gas tax. Yes, the gas tax went up, but it actually eliminated all taxation for senior citizens, including myself.
And also lowered the sales tax a little bit.
Yes, it did. Yes, it did. But I think that where Mikey Sherrill is walking a thin line is on the issue of the sales tax, because that tax I've always felt had more anathema to it than any other tax. I remember when I was serving on the staff of Chuck Hytine when he was Speaker of the Republican Speaker of the Assembly, and when we were trying to decide where we would focus our efforts, this is before Whitman was elected, on cutting the sales tax or cutting the income tax. Now, on the one hand, there was sentiment for cutting the income tax because that was a tax that Florio increased by the most. On the other hand, the final decision was made to concentrate on the sales tax because, as one of the consultants said, what is the tax that you feel the most when you make a purchase? And the answer was the sales tax. Yeah. There is a PO factor. I won't spell out the words, but there is a PO factor that's very aggravating. Every time you buy a car and you're paying a high sales tax, every time you go to the tax register and you're paying for sales tax, every time you take an Uber ride, there's a sales tax. And so that has an enormous alienation factor. That was a good word, Alan. That's an enormous alienation factor. So, but I think, however, this is where she runs a risk. The longer she goes and doesn't answer the question as to whether she would pledge not to, it started off with her issue to sales tax because they juxtaposed a few things that Chitterelli had said in previous debates. He never promised, I wouldn't use the word promise. He never offered a sales tax increase. Yep. He never came out for that. And at this point, when he said, I will not raise your sales taxes, it was accepted because he had pounded over and over again that he wasn't going to do it. She hasn't done that. And I could see in the last few weeks some very good commercials. I always think of what commercials can be made, but I could see some very good commercials that could be made by Chitterelli as to why doesn't Mikey Sherrill pledge not to increase the sales tax, how this could happen. And I think that's another thing I'm looking for in the last few weeks.
Yeah, I mentioned that was a moment that I heard a lot about in the wake of the debate, was that for more than a week, she had been saying, well, he's left the sales tax on the table. He didn't, maybe he didn't propose it, but he said, all options have to be on the table. So he didn't wipe it away. And I heard Republicans be like, how hypocritical to then be asked that question in debate and you not take it off the table. And I heard one Democratic insider told me she should have taken it off the table. Like she should have, but sometimes, you don't want to paint yourself into a corner. So that could be a moment you see come up again. But But I guess, her point is that Republicans were supposed to be very anti-tax. What was he doing leaving it on the table? But Jack never outright said that, and she never outright said that she wouldn't raise the sales tax again. So you could see more interplay on that.
I definitely think you could, and I definitely think you will, because every time they pull the affordability issue, taxes come out as the lead component of
Yeah.
basically of affordability. I am surprised that housing hasn't been a bigger issue in this campaign.
It's an esoteric issue. I think we've discussed this before. It's tough to explain affordable housing. Everyone assumes it just means, cheap housing, but it's more than
Right.
that. It involves development, and there's two sides going at each other. And try explaining COA to someone who doesn't care or doesn't understand. So it's a complex issue, and maybe that's why it hasn't come up more.
Well, I have to say this, Brent. This is a historic time, and I thank you so much for appearing on our show
Oh
tonight.
yeah, anytime.
Well, I'm going to take advantage of that and ask you
Yes.
more, especially when we get close to the election, because nobody communicates the issues on this election better than you. Nobody analyzes the politics better than you, and nobody comes up with the facts better than you. But the thing I'll be hounding you about, I say this in a complimentary way, I think that what is involved in this honor code matter is a big, big deal. And the politics, we can't really analyze it yet. But the longer she doesn't deal with the issue as to why she couldn't march with her fellow midshipmen at her graduation, and the longer she tries to conflate the issues and make the honor code violation less of a matter than how the records got released, I think she's hurting herself. I'm telling you, this is an issue that came from out of nowhere. But when I saw the Globe around 1:30, I said, "Look out!"
Yeah.
I said, "This has all the smell of an explosive issue." So you'll be covering that. I'll be asking questions, and we'll see what happens. But once again, my friend, thank you very much. Oh, I'm sending you something that will give you a laugh.
All right.
It's regarding to the Mets. I was interviewed. I went to like 22 games this year. I was interviewed before one of the games walking into Citi Field, and they had signs, Met therapy. And these signs talk about how you could cure your problems by following the Mets. And I gave my 2 cents on it, but they seemed to really enjoy the interview. So I will be sending you,
forward to that.
after this debate,
I
Alan
always
Steinberg being interviewed on Met therapy.
I always say being a Mets fan teaches you more about life than anything, the ups and the downs and everything involved in life.
It certainly
When I was winning
does.
championships, but you get a lot of lessons.
But if they make the playoffs, and look, it looks like the Yankees are fairly secure in making the playoffs.
You are, yeah.
If the Mets make the playoffs, and I am much more, I'm not a Yankee fan hater, but I root for the Mets. And
the Phillies are another story.
What's that?
The Phillies are another story. I don't mind. I don't hate the Yankees, but
I'm the same way. I hate the Phillies.
Yeah, Phillies and Braves. They can go pound salt.
I agree with you. I hate those teams, but since the Yankees are a New York team, if they were to make the playoffs and the Mets didn't, I'd wish them well and I'd watch the games.
Sure.
But if the Mets don't make the playoffs and it's just the Yankees, same thing. I'll wish them well and watch the games. But if the two teams play each other, that's what I love. That intercity rivalry in New York is the greatest rivalry in sports, in my view.
Yes.
And the two teams this year hit another high attendance hallmark. The Mets drew 3.3 million, and I was at the game when they reached that objective. So I'll send you these two films of Alan Steinberg being interviewed for Met therapy.
I look forward.
Okay, my friend, take care of the family, and it's great to have you on. Every once in a while, Doc Yoni brings on his son. So if you ever want to bring on one of your kids and get them in a conversation,
absolutely, they're sleeping right now. But the next time they're up, I will come bring them in because Everly, my daughter,
family-oriented show. What's that?
My daughter loves being on camera, so the next time she's up, when I'm
she's ideal.
Yes.
Well, have her on. Her name is Everly.
Everly, like after the Everly brothers, and
like bye love, bye happiness, hello loneliness.
My son is Carter after Gary Carter.
That I know.
Yep.
Okay, my friend, it's been a great show, and I'll be in touch.
Thank you. See you soon. Thank you.
Another stellar moment from Dynamic Political Centrism. My thanks to Brent Johnson, who wrote a Pulitzer-level piece today on the honor code scandal. and also to Doc Yaris, who makes all this possible with high technology. Take care, friends, and keep on watching.
Thank you for joining us for the latest edition of Dynamic Political Centrism. Check back each week for our newest episodes, and you can catch past episodes online via YouTube and Spotify, and please